Let's just go straight across now to these images which we see from Rashtrapati Bhavan, the US President Barack Obama seated with Prime Minister Modi. This is the President's at-home reception. It'll go on for a little while. Later on today, the big CEOs meet. I'll just give you an idea of the itinerary of the US President at this stage, and he may not attend all of these events. But essentially, now it's the at-home reception by the President. At 5:30, the India-US CEO Forum meet. That's being held at the Taj Palace Hotel, and at 6:40 the India-US Business Summit. That's when India and the United States would hope that there is some serious work that gets done in terms of taking bilateral trade forward. Tomorrow is the last day of the visit of the US President. He addresses a town hall style meeting, we are told, at City Fort in Delhi at 10:30 in the morning. There will be a joint address on radio as well at some stage. Let's just listen in to the national anthem. All right, not the national anthem as yet. There are bugles playing in the background, perhaps ahead of the arrival of the President, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee. So just to go back to the schedule, tomorrow, the 27th of January, 10:30, is the address by the US President at the City Fort Auditorium. He departs India at 1:50 in the afternoon. There would be some media commitments by the US President prior to that as well. President Pranab Mukherjee, I believe, will be arriving over here. This event, the at-home reception taking place at Rashtrapati Bhavan. Let's just listen in to what's happening. Mandal. Right, President Pranab Mukherjee at this at-home event. It's his event at Rashtrapati Bhavan. Barack Obama, the US President, Michelle Obama, I believe that is the former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh being greeted over there by, or greeting in fact, the US President and Michelle Obama. This is largely an informal meet where the US President meets a handful of other individuals. As I mentioned, the business end of this visit today is the CEO forum meeting, which is taking place at 5:30 p.m. a short distance away from the Taj Palace Hotel, from Rashtrapati Bhavan at the Taj Palace Hotel. The India-US Business Summit is also taking place at that same venue. We saw Barack Obama seated for just a little while with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi a little while ago. He is now meeting several people who have assembled over there. It's been a very successful Republic Day parade earlier on in the day, attended by the US President. It is the first time a US President has attended a Republic Day parade in India. That went off flawlessly. It was raining, however, but the women power, which seemed to be very much the item to be showcased as far as the government was concerned, was indeed showcased at the parade. I'm also told that at least 11 of the 25 tableaus which were showcased featured some of the government's key schemes, whether they were the Jan Dhan Yojana, whether it was Make in India, Swachh Bharat, some of the other schemes dear to the Prime Minister as well. So some images over here of this largely informal gathering at Rashtrapati Bhavan, President Pranab Mukherjee greeting several of those who have been invited. All right, we can stay with these images and just resume our discussion at this stage. Siddharth, you wanted to make a point on what we were discussing a little while earlier on the entire China equation, that China is upset with what's happened. This was as a result of the joint statement between the two countries, India and the US, which was signed and released yesterday.
Actually, the remarks that have come today from the Foreign Ministry spokesman in China are not very different from the Chinese reaction last September, when South China Sea was first flagged as an issue in a joint statement, right? Where they said this is we're quite capable of doing it. I think the reason why today's statement is why the Chinese continue to protest about this or to raise this manner is because today's statement goes much beyond merely a reference to South China Sea. The vision document talks about India and the US as countries that have shared values. There's a reference to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There's a reference to the US and India leveraging their relations with like-minded countries in the region in order to contribute to regional security. All of this essentially is code for talking of US, India, Australia, Japan, etc. Working with one object in mind, which is how to deal with a rising China, how to hedge against a rising China. So I think the Chinese are very clear about what is being constructed here. The Asia pivot of the US was always known, but Mr. Modi has gone the furthest that any previous government has in being willing to embrace that kind of an American approach. So I think that hidden within the Chinese response is also some apprehension about what this means.
Dr. Rajamohan, maritime exercises between India and the US have grown. They're called the Malabar exercises. They've been happening now for more than a decade. These are very high-end exercises now. It started, with both sides trying to figure out each other's capabilities, but these are some of the highest level exercises that the US has with any allies, perhaps exceeding what they do even with NATO partners, some NATO partners. This is obviously being done to ensure that interoperability is not just a concept, it's a reality between American forces and Indian forces. That means something to China as well.
Yeah, I think particularly when they're beginning to come to the Indian Ocean and they see more India-US cooperation. But I think what happened was, the first year of Manmohan Singh, you saw the India-US defense framework. Many of the ideas, whether it was working together with Japan, whether it is doing more exercises in the Indian Ocean, were all done under Manmohan Singh. But the fact was, I think once Mr. Antony took over as defense minister after Mr. Mukherjee, there's been a pullback. There's been a sense, in fact, it went the other way, essentially saying, look, don't get too close to the Americans, the Chinese will get upset. So in a sense, Antony drew a Lakshman Rekha saying, look, we must self-limit what we do with the Americans. I think what this present government is saying, look, we have no problem with China, we're going to deal with them, but China doesn't tell us what it does with Pakistan. China doesn't defer to my sensitivities when they do things with in Sri Lanka. When they send a submarine, they don't tell me. So why is it I have to constantly defer to his sensitivities and he does not defer to mine?
But tell me something, since you observe this very, very carefully, has there been, as a result of the new government in Sri Lanka, already signs of a reversal? Rajapaksa, it was said, used to play off India versus China. He did this quite comprehensively. We have a new government in place which has got its strategic objectives relatively sorted out. That being the case, do the Chinese perhaps have reason to worry that the inroads they'd made into Sri Lanka will no longer be the case?
Yeah, I think part of the problem with their strategy is, look, you choose sides within the domestic politics. That you get to, you're so much in with Rajapaksa. So when he loses power, you tend to lose in the short term. But my sense is the Chinese are not going to be thrown out.
No.
I think the new government will say, look, we've got to be more balanced. That is, you can't upset the Americans and the Indians by letting Chinese military vessels come into your ports. So I think they'll maintain some kind of an economic relationship. After all, China is the second largest economy, and no one is going to stop cooperating with China. But I think they'll be a little more careful. Yeah. But I think something similar in Maldives, where we had a better relationship with Nasheed.
Yes.
Chinese have a much better thing going with the present government. So I think the footprint of China and India are going to overlap. We're not just about the Himalayan border.
No.
But through the Indian Ocean and Vietnam, which you mentioned earlier, there is going to be an overlap of a footprint, and that's going to generate friction. And how then that intersects with the American strategy, I think that's so. It's going to be a complex, interesting game to watch for the next 20 years.
Let's just reflect on these images, Praveen, for a moment. A huge gathering at Rashtrapati Bhavan. I'm told journalists are invited also. All beat reporters of Rashtrapati Bhavan are over there. So there has been a little bit more acceptance of the media in a sense.
The correspondents were always called.
At home always had huge amounts of journalists.
Is accredited, most accredited correspondents.
But they aren't anywhere close to.
So the VVIPs have a separate.
The two layers, three probably.
Well, several at this stage. But Barack Obama over there, not in those crowds that you see on your screen right now, but in that VVIP enclosure, along with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, meeting several dignitaries. It's a relatively informal sort of event. It's not as formal as the official state level dinner, which was or lunch, which was working lunch, which was held yesterday, or the banquet, which was held yesterday. This is a somewhat more informal air, where the president can in a sense reach out to lots of people, cutting across Indian society in a sense. Let's see whether there'd be any statements which are made by the US President. The crowd waving over there, I assume, to either Prime Minister Modi or to the US President Barack Obama. We saw Dr. Manmohan Singh also there a little while earlier on. Dr. Manmohan Singh, the former Prime Minister, was also present during the Republic Day parade, as was the Congress President Sonia Gandhi. It was a fabulous Republic Day parade. There was only one downer. It was raining, and therefore it does appear that some of the VVIPs in that enclosure of theirs would have been soaked by the end of the parade, because in as much as there was a barrier to protect them from bullets, there was nothing on top of their heads, so they would be safe from bullets, but certainly not from rainwater. We'll stay with these images for a little bit more time, and just return to the thrust of our discussion. Let's move away, gentlemen, if we can, from the China issue. Let's talk a little bit about nuclear commerce. In fact, we'll play out an interview with the CEO of Westinghouse in a while from now.
That'll be interesting.
That'll be interesting to see. We have that interview. It'll come up in a while from now. Do you really think American companies are convinced by what has happened yesterday? Is that good enough for them to say, okay, that's enough, we are now finally coming in, enough talk, or it's going to take perhaps more years?
I think the American companies were, their members of the board, their legal representatives were actively involved in the 3 rounds of negotiations that India conducted with the United States. India took all the major departments. You had the Department of Atomic Energy, the NPCIL, Ministry of Law. So I think there were all the stakeholders, shall we say, who had problems from their side with liability, and those who had some say in how interpreting it or explaining it were there. So I think what the government is saying, that look, we have explained and removed the misperceptions of the companies. As far as the insurance issue goes, we've created a mechanism that should take care of the supplier liability. So that is where the government is saying, now it's up to the commercial contract. But the proof of the pudding is finally when a company like Westinghouse says, look, I'm ready to go ahead. So I think what he says, it's because it's what they do and say is the consequential thing, not a political analysis of it, because you had to convince those who said, we don't like what we see, we think it's going to be too expensive and too risky.
All right. Well, just in case you've tuned in, our viewers have tuned in now, the images that are being broadcast are from Rashtrapati Bhavan, the at-home reception of the Indian President Pranab Mukherjee, the US President over there, Barack Obama being seated, and he's met lots of people over there. large gathering of people from cross-section of society in Delhi. And a question was asked, in fact, a little while earlier on, where exactly is Barack Obama having dinner? Because we don't know. I mean, there is no word on that. Apparently, no dinner with Prime Minister Modi at the moment. That's not been scheduled. The two leaders have spent a great deal of time together at Republic Day today. They met yesterday as well. There was that Chai Pe Charcha, which also took place yesterday. But it's been a fairly exhausting trip for the US President Barack Obama, who said that he sleeps for about 5 hours. He can't quite do with the 3 hours that Prime Minister Modi can manage with. So I assume he would be jet lagged at some stage. It sometimes amazes me how leaders like the presidents of the US can manage to deal with jet lag. It's terrible if you travel east.
It's particularly terrible if you travel economy class, but I'm sure world leaders travel in considerably greater comfort. They have bedrooms, suites, showers, the works. So I would assume it's a little bit more comfortable than for the rest of us.
But wasn't there a report saying the president had a private party and he was meeting, kind of, it was a little thing he was doing for...
Apparently a private dinner at one of the leading restaurants.
In Maurya itself, where he's staying. So it's
and at some point he will also be recording Man Ki Baat. That's the radio sort of address to the Indian people. And tomorrow we'll see Obama quite informal once again at that particular meeting, the town hall style meeting. We saw a town hall last time he was here that ended up with him and Michelle Obama dancing with children in Mumbai. So there's nothing of that planned. I don't think Obama would have come had he been asked to dance this time around. There was an element of humor yesterday at his banquet at Rashtrapati Bhavan, where he actually said that Michelle stole the thunder last time around when she was when after that event when they were dancing with school children, and he was well behind in the background. So quite a gathering, as you can see on your screens over there from Rashtrapati Bhavan. Let's just go back to General Prasad, who has been waiting for quite some time. General, you've watched the entire Republic Day parade. Do you think it was a bit of a reality check as well for the US President? Yesterday he conveyed his concerns about Russia to the Indian leadership, but today we had Indian Army tanks of Russian origin along with Russian fighter aircraft and also American systems. So, I mean, it's not one or the other for India.
Well, the equipment that went past the Rajpath basically was Russian origin, and if I may say so, not so modern. I wouldn't like to use the word antiquated, but maybe not so modern. In fact, the Indian armed forces do need a lot more modern weapons and equipment, high technology equipment, and that is exactly what the President of the United States here is for. The issue before both the government is how to get these modern weapons in the form of artillery, guns, night vision devices, radars, tanks, missiles, AWACS. So there are a large number of equipments which need modernization. As you are very familiar, we have had very poor modernization progress over the last 20 years. That's because of many reasons which I don't suppose is worthwhile mentioning them today. But the whole exercise is that let us try and make these equipments in India with transfer of technology. I did read a newspaper report 2 days ago which said the BAE, which makes the 155mm artillery gun, is quite inclined to set up a factory here in India to produce these guns, and we need something like 3,000 more guns. The last gun we ever bought was Bofors more than 20 years ago. It will be a great idea if that factory can be put up in India. An American company putting up a factory in India, that's exactly what Narendra Modi wants. And once the requirement of the Indian Armed Forces is met, whether it's the artillery gun or night vision equipment or rifles or UAVs or drones or radars, then the companies that are manufacturing it here can then export it to elsewhere in the world. So it's a win-win situation both for America and American companies and for India and for Indian companies. We can have Indian participation in it. We can generate so much more employment here. We can create people with technical background to participate in this. When such a facility is available, when such a possibility exists, and if we can give the kind of facilities that the foreign companies are looking forward to, then I'm sure it can happen. So the whole exercise is homing on towards creating conditions which are good for people abroad to come and invest and feel safe and comfortable to be able to work here. Now that is how the armed forces are going to get modernized. If you're going to stick to what we were doing in the past 20 years, I'm afraid we will continue to lose time, continue to lose more money. So this is a very good idea. As you mentioned, on the Rajpath today we had pretty much old equipment. We need better equipment. We need far more greater technology in this field. And I think a message should have gone to the President of the United States to say that India definitely does need modernization, and I think it's possible to do it. But having said all of it, I think it was a very impressive parade, and what message that the Indian Armed Forces conveyed to the President of the United States today is two. Firstly, irrespective of what kind of weather there would be, we are capable of putting an outstanding parade. You would have noticed on parade, every single marching column displayed same standard of drill, turnout, and dedication to march past as in a bright sunlight any time in the past. Even the Air Force went through the fly past. And to crown everything, the marching contingents were led by female marching contingent of the Army, the Navy and the Air Force.
Yes.
Which is a great change. The other thing which I want to bring to your notice, Vishnu, is that every time the Prime Minister comes to the Amar Jawan Jyoti, all of us who are either in service or retired think about Army Memorial. Now the present Prime Minister has openly made statement that his government is serious about making an Army Memorial, and well, we need to have one of our own, because what India Gate is a First World War memorial. And the other thing which strikes me when I look at the Prime Minister standing there and laying a wreath is that today is one occasion when the head of the government is not only coming and paying homage to those who have martyred their lives for the security of the nation, but is also recognizing the services of the armed forces personnel over the period of time to keep this nation secure.
Right.
And that makes all of us feel very happy.
Well, the event at Rashtrapati Bhavan appears to be coming to a close slowly. A lot of people have begun leaving, but not quite the Prime Minister and Barack Obama. They are still over there, but I believe that they are starting to leave at this stage. It will be a fairly hectic day already for the US President, the President of India, our President Pranab Mukherjee, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. They've been at Rajpath since early this morning, and there is this is the last formal meeting of the day between these leaders. There is nothing more expected at this stage. I believe there is a personal dinner which Obama will be having this evening. There is that one Man Ki Baat radio announcement which Modi and Barack Obama are scheduled to host or to hold at some stage. Perhaps tomorrow, but it's unclear when that would actually be recorded. So they aren't leaving at the moment, it seems. They're just waving to people over there, having cups of tea. This is a visit that's been all about drinking a lot of tea. There's more tea being served. Yesterday the Prime Minister served tea to Barack Obama, more tea being served over here. I wonder if the President Obama actually dug into a lot of that food at the banquet yesterday. It seemed to be a fairly delicious, well, it seemed to be quite nice. It read nicely. I'm not sure quite how it tasted.
क्या कर रहा है मैं तो अरे यार खत्म हो गई बन गई सर जी लेते कल हैदराबाद आपका बारिश आ गई पकड़ी आ रही मनमोहन सिंह की यार कॉपी टू वन मेरे पर मनमोहन सिंह पकड़ी आ रही है अभी लगा हुआ यार हाथ वाथ बड़ा लिफ्ट के बाद खत्म से तो हो गई है बन्नी इसके बाद कुछ खत्म जल्दी जाओ जो जारी करनी कोई भी को कॉल कर रहा है मेरी बड़ी लेगा तो एक खत्म नहीं जा कहाँ जा रहे हैं लोगों से मिलने जा रहे हैं और नहीं प्रोटोकॉल डिग्री से मिलेंगे ना मैं नहीं अब जा रहा हूँ वो खत्म होने जा रहा है अच्छा ही बात है यार